Hello, America. Welcome to another episode of the Plaidcast, hosted by your favorite lumberjack in Congress, because I am your only lumberjack in Congress. I am honored today to have the senator from the great state of Iowa, Joni Ernst, here with me today. Thank you for being here. You're my first senator. I've had governors, members of Congress. Yes, my first senator, and the 20th episode. So thank you for being here.
Such an honor.
You know, it really is. I mean, the millions of people who watch were excited that you're going to be in this week. Maybe it's up to 2 or 3 million, I'm not quite sure, but you won your Senate race in 2014.
Yes.
You're a 23-year veteran of the military, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I want to quickly talk about some news of the week. I think this was over in the Senate. Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen said that the cartels are actually making $500 million a year, $500 million a year, in shuttling illegals across our southern border. And I thought it was an interesting point. What she said was that the economies in El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala are all improving. The homicide rates are declining, but people are still coming across the southern border because our economy is booming and we have lax American laws. This is an issue that Donald Trump ran on. What say you? How do we one, fix our border, and two, make sure that our lax policies aren't funding cartels?
Well, Sean, you're asking how we fix our border. I know how we fix our border. And President Trump has already proposed that. We've talked about it in Congress. It is having a physical barrier in certain locations.
A wall, right?
Wow, a wall.
Walls.
So, yes, and we know this in the military, that you redirect, you shape the battlefield with certain things like physical barriers. So having a wall, it may not work in every location, but in those other locations, certainly there's technology that can be used, additional border security
Boots
agents.
on the ground.
We know all of that. We have to fund it.
So what's frustrating is it makes so much sense, and Democrats actually voted for this with the Secure Fence Act in 2000, I believe, 7.
They did. Yes, they did.
And now they're in opposition to it because President Trump brought it up. But I think this is a stark figure that says, hey, we have to get our act together in the Congress, in both of our chambers. And I don't know what you think about this, but I have the belief that Democrats like this as a political issue. They like to see a flow of immigrants coming across the southern border. They like to have people who are here illegally. And if we resolve this issue, they lose what they think is a potent political issue that they can beat us over the head with. Am I wrong?
I think you are spot on. And I hate to see this because those dreamers or those DACA recipients that we have, and I know that they are valued in Iowa.
In Wisconsin, too.
I think all across the nation, we all understand that, but I do think that they are being used as a tool by the Democrats. And we saw this last summer as we brought up the DACA debate, and which I thought was extremely fair, the proposal that came down from President Trump.
The 4 pillars from the president?
Yes, the 4 pillars. And I was a co-sponsor of that legislation in the United States Senate, and a firm believer in that, and a very generous pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients.
1.8 million DACA young people.
Which was a lot for me, and I had to give a little bit to go that direction, but they are valued, and I think that in order to move the legislation forward, I had to give a little bit.
That's right.
So I gave a little bit. I co-sponsored the legislation, but unfortunately we saw that our Democrats did not want to give, period, even on something that they had supported just a few years ago.
Which was border security and the $25 billion that the president has asked for to secure the southern border. What I'm hopeful, and we were just talking about this today in our House conference, how do we move forward? And you know, there's a discharge petition conversation in the House. I think what's going to happen is we are going to come back as a House conference around those 4 pillars. Mr. Goodlatte came out with a bill that was a little more conservative, like his bill, but a little more conservative than we think can pass the House. Other more moderate proposals don't fund the wall, but I think if we get the 4 pillars and the $25 billion the president has talked about, I think we get our Freedom Caucus to our more moderate members, and we can send it over to the Senate. And I know that it's a lot different when we passed a bill and we can put a little pressure maybe on Senate Democrats to say, hey, do you want to help these young people, or do you want to leave them out in the cold?
Well, and I am skeptical about the reaction that we'll have in the Senate from Democrats. The pressure, it'll be there. It'll be there, but we offered virtually that same package earlier last year, and it didn't happen. But I will say that I don't want to discount anything, because I think this issue is that important. It needs to be resolved.
I would just note that on immigration, both of us come from agriculture states.
Yes.
And listen, my dairy farms use a lot of immigrant labor.
Yes.
And making sure that we have a system that actually works for our industries is important, but also abiding by our laws is also important. I want to turn to Gina Haskell. She just had a vote in the Senate Intelligence Committee, Gina Haspel. She passed, but I believe it was on a partisan vote. Do you know when she's going to come to the Senate floor?
She should come up soon. We were hoping that we would see her as soon as tomorrow. I think that's been maybe a little bit delayed. But she will come up soon, and she will be confirmed.
She will be confirmed, and we'll get Democrat support.
And we will get some Democratic support. Yes, we will.
Great. I didn't know of her until she was put forward by the president, and I watched some of the hearings. And what an impressive person with an impressive record. I thought she was great, and she'll do a wonderful job.
She will.
So, that's news. Hopefully, coming out of the Senate in the next couple of days. What I get concerned about is, obviously there's partisanship on both sides, but I don't believe that, and you were there under the Obama years, Senate Republicans weren't obstructionists like this under the Obama era, were they? I mean, it seemed like they realized that the president gets to form their own government, even though we might not like their appointees. The individual won and gets to put a government together. That's not necessarily what's happening with Senate Democrats right now with President Trump, is it?
Right, and no, I think there is a lot of obstruction right now, slow walking of all of the nominees, people that are eminently qualified for these positions. And the bad thing is that the Senate Democrats will filibuster, or they'll slow down a confirmation. They'll demand 30 hours of debate time on the floor of the Senate for a nominee that they end up voting for anyway. We've had a number of those instances where they demand the 30 hours of debate, and then the person ends up getting confirmed 98-0.
So on every nominee, can they ask for this 30-hour?
Yes,
so
they can.
And does the clock run at night and on the weekend? How
no,
long?
it sure doesn't. It's while we're in session. And so what we have figured is, James Lankford had done this last fall, and he figured at the rate that we were moving in the United States Senate with those confirmations, he figured it would take 11 years and a number of months to get all of the nominations completed.
And I know this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, and there's a great history of the Senate, and both sides work together to make sure you preserve some of those rules. But I have to tell you, from the House side, and as an American watching what's happening and how Democrats are slow walking the president, I think there's frustration, and people probably want to see some of these rules at least modified or changed somewhat to move things along. Is there any appetite for that, or is that just not going to happen?
There is. There's obviously appetite on our side, and in our conference, we think it's really important to do this. So, oddly enough, James Lankford, because he has walked out all these nominations 11 years out, he is really spearheading an effort right now to change the rules of the Senate and limit debate, limit the number of hours that they can debate. This is a
4
very
hours, 6 hours, 10 hours.
Rule.
Yeah.
Yes. So what he has proposed, and which can be debated, we could change this, but what he has proposed is basically the same thing that Democrats proposed a number of years ago as well, which would be to limit the debate on Supreme Court justices to 8 hours. Very significant position. 8 hours of debate, maybe judicial nominations, other judicial nominations to 4 hours of debate, and then all of the other nominees, maybe if they're not cabinet members, limit them to 2 hours of debate.
Thank you.
But yes, okay, so who's going to resist now? It's going to be the Democrats.
Exactly. They're part of the resist movement right now. I have to tell you, so as you know, that the Republicans and Democrats, America is pretty divided right now. You see, we have fights in the House between Republicans and Democrats. The one thing, though, that unifies everybody in the House is our frustration at the Senate. It unifies all of us. And sometimes,
We're the bad guy.
and sometimes we wonder, it's like they
Yeah.
they probably have tea time at 3:30 and dinner at 4:30 and in bed by 5:30. But I was over yesterday. The floor is empty just because the clock is ticking, right? You're not doing anything.
The clock is ticking.
Just have to let the clock run out, so you don't have a chance to do anything because they're running the clock on these things.
That's why they are so effective at slowing down nominations and slowing down actual policy work. So when we're talking about, okay, DACA, the wall, some of those policy initiatives, we can't really get to those quick enough because we're in the human resources business right now in the Senate. That's all we are doing. It's really unfortunate because then I think all of our constituencies are suffering because there are things within the law that need to be modernized, they need to be changed, and we can't address them.
Because we're playing with the rules on the nominations. So I do hope the Senate will take a hard look at it because I think Democrats can't believe that this is the right approach when the roles are reversed, that Republicans would use the same strategy with them with the next Democrat president. And so hopefully they can see to it to come to some kind of compromise. I want to talk about your history. I didn't realize this until I started to prepare for you coming in, but you actually studied in the Soviet Union, is that right?
I was on an agricultural exchange.
In the Soviet Union?
In the Soviet Union. Yes.
How was that?
Well, and I'll try and abbreviate as much as I can. So it was actually between my freshman and sophomore year at Iowa State University. Of course, the number one university in all of our being.
Iowa. In all of Iowa.
But between those years, I did this exchange to the Soviet Union. It was with a group of students from all over the state of Iowa. Most of us had ag backgrounds, and we lived on a collective farm and went out farm during the day. In the evening, we came together and we were supposed to talk about ag, Iowa versus, it was in Ukraine. And we didn't talk about that at all. And
What did you
Sean,
talk about?
I'm going to ask you, what do you think the number one question that they asked us that first night that we came together?
I don't know, democracy, freedom, I don't, what?
You are spot on. The number
Really?
one question that they asked us was, what is it like to be an American?
Really?
What is it like to be an American?
And so does this point come up because they felt like they had less freedom, less
Yes.
opportunity?
So when I went, I was 19 years old at that time. It was the Soviet Union. And as a young woman, I'm thinking, it's the Cold War, superpowers, and that the Soviet Union would offer the same types of opportunities as we had here in the United States. And I got over there from our small farm in southwest Iowa, headed to a collective farm in Ukraine, and they had no running water. They didn't have a telephone. They didn't have a refrigerator.
Like a
they
third
didn't
world
have a
country.
car. It would be like farming in Iowa, maybe in the early part of the 1900s.
Did this, because there's this interesting debate that's even happening on college campuses about capitalism and socialism.
Yes.
And I can't imagine that if young people today had the same experience that you had with communism, that they would think that this is a great model. Or if they even looked at Venezuela today, they'd go, this is a better model than the American capitalist system. And it's shocking that so many kids believe that this is a better model than the one that we have.
Right. And without...
Do you talk to young people about this?
I do. And especially in the last presidential election cycle, when we had someone who really is a self-proclaimed socialist
Your
who
colleague,
is
Bernie
quite
Sanders.
popular in Iowa with younger people.
Yeah.
As I was out and about doing my town halls, I would describe that situation to them and understand the difference in the opportunities that we are given in the most remarkable country on the face of the planet versus those socialist systems and the very little opportunity. Those people were suffering. Literally, I was hand cranking water every morning for us to use to wash dishes, wash our hands and faces. We bathed maybe once a week. And it was a sponge bath. I mean, it was just very different. And you know what? All of these young men and women that were so excited about this particular candidate. They have all the modern conveniences in the world. Why? Because we are in a capitalist society.
They don't get it. Hopefully you tell every young person you come across, every speech you give, the story of what you saw there, because I think
actually do.
That's powerful. I want to move. I know that you served in the military for 23 years in the Reserve and Army National Guard.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
thank you for that. You
You
were
I
a colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel.
And worked on logistics. So what do you take from your military experience as you've now come to the Senate?
Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because the story I just told you about the Soviet Union is exactly why I went into the service.
So the experience in the Soviet Union is why you went into...
I came back, got into Iowa State for my fall semester of my sophomore year, and I decided I can't take this for granted.
Right.
And I need to do something to uphold our freedoms and values. And so I joined ROTC and went into the service.
That's great.
So I share that story all of the time. And my time in the military has been one of the most valuable experiences, and it is my greatest honor to be able to serve this country in that manner, putting that uniform on. I did deploy for Operation Iraqi Freedom 1 as a transportation company commander.
How was that?
And that was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So you talk to anyone in the transportation business at the beginning of the war.
A little rough.
It was a little rough. So if you enjoy sleeping in sandstorms, on the hood of a Humvee,
were you sleeping in sandstorms?
Tents? So we had tents. We slept on the backs of our trailers. We slept on the hood of our Humvees when we were out running convoys. Wow. But it teaches you to be humble. It teaches you, again, to recognize how valuable our country is and that we are a leader that many nations depend on. So taking all that into the Senate, man, it's a breeze in the Senate. After going through that experience.
And it's just, it does, I suppose, show you a level of gratitude for the conveniences and the opportunities
we are thankful.
That we have.
I am thankful.
Now, my last show I did with Governor Walker, who talks a lot about his summer Harley rides that he does. But I know that you do a roast and ride in Iowa, a Harley ride through the state. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell me about it. This is a fundraiser for...
it's for veterans. Well, overall, overall, the actual roast portion of the day, we do a hog roast. That's a fundraiser for me. But
near and dear to your heart.
When we do the motorcycle ride, and I'm an avid rider, and I have ridden with your wonderful governor.
You have.
It was fantastic on our Harleys, and that portion of the day.
Up in leather. You're
leathered up,
nice.
Jeans, leather boots, leather vest, you name it. I do wear a helmet. I wear a helmet, safety first. Anyway, but it's a great experience. Last year we had about 500 folks who joined the ride, and all of the proceeds from the motorcycle ride go to various veterans charities, and we do a different charity every year. It goes to the Travis Mills Foundation this year. They do sponsor, he is a veteran himself, a disabled veteran, and they sponsor families in Maine at a retreat that's located in Maine, just to help overcome adversity and really support the families. So
you raise money in the ride, give it to the foundation, and help our vets out. Now I heard this year that your special guest was going to be one South Carolinian, Trey Gowdy.
Yes,
is that right?
It is. Congressman Trey Gowdy.
Well, I don't know if he's. I see him more on the golf course than on a Harley, but if you could get a picture of him after he takes his helmet off with that hair, that would be fantastic.
Let's
make sure we.
I don't know if it would change at all.
It actually may not change at all. Might be sticking up a little bit more, or maybe he'll get one of those haircuts that put it tight to his head.
That's awesome.
He's
we look forward to it.
He is a great guy. So if you want to find Joni Ernst, you can go to JoniForIowa.com, on Facebook, Joni for Iowa, and on Twitter she's Joni Ernst. So you can catch her there. We're now going to go to what we refer to as the Buzzsaw.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
also rapid fire if you can't figure this out. So,
all right.
What's the worst part of the swamp?
The worst part of the swamp? It's the muddy feet. No, it is. It is trying to change what goes on a daily basis. And it seems like you're pushing up against a brick
It's so
wall.
hard, isn't it?
But we've got to do it.
We do.
We got to do it.
What's your favorite part about Iowa that you miss when you're here in D.C.?
Small town, Iowa.
Are you from a small town?
I am. I
Yeah,
grew up
so
on
am
a
I.
farm near a small town, little Swedish community called Stanton, Iowa.
Yeah.
Lovely folks. Lovely folks. I miss being back home, not putting makeup on, wearing my jeans and boots, and just going out to places where people love you for who you are, not that you're a senator.
And real people.
Yeah.
What's your favorite fried food at the Iowa State Fair?
Corn dogs.
I love corn
See
dogs
how
too.
fast that came out?
Dude, I love yes.
Corn dogs.
The foot-long corn dog.
Yeah.
They're great.
I hate to admit it, but yes.
Okay, who's your favorite Senate Democrat?
Kirsten Gillibrand.
Really? Why?
She and I are like polar opposites on
like what?
99%. I know, on 99%
seems
of
like a nice
everything.
person.
But she is a great person. She is a great mother, and we are in Bible study together.
You are.
We are in the Congressional Women's Softball together, which she talked me into. We go to supper together, and she's actually fixed me meatloaf at her house with her 2 boys. They're lovely. And we baked banana bread together.
I'm gonna say
She's a good friend.
You make an interesting point, because I think that people see politics separating people from friendship, and you know what, we can disagree on politics but still become really good friends with each other, and that's a good example of what more Americans can learn from is you can disagree politically, but you don't have to hate each other. You can actually like each other
I like her very, very much.
be friends. Who is your favorite Disney princess?
Probably Cinderella. You know, she was a really hard worker.
She was a hard worker.
She
got
didn't mind
dirty
getting
like
dirty.
on the farm.
I know.
Well played.
Slopping the hogs.
What is your favorite cheese?
Oh gosh, probably pepper jack.
Pepper jack?
Because it's spicy. I do really like it. I had some last night. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let you do one last question before I let you go. I know you got to get back to the Senate side. So Paul Bunyan is buried in my district with his blue ox. A larger-than-life figure, right?
Right.
Who is your non-mythical figure in your life that's had an impact on who you've become today?
That is an easy one. Outside of my family and my husband, Colonel Ralph Puckett is a dear friend of my husband and I. He lives in Columbus, Georgia. He is a Korean-era Ranger, as well as he served in Vietnam as well. Incredible leader, and he had such a significant impact on my life and leadership style.
That is fantastic. So I'm going to wrap in 1 second. Tell me this. In Iowa, no pro football teams. So,
oh gosh.
So do you go to Illinois? Do you go to Minnesota?
I don't go to Wisconsin.
Who do you actually cheer for? You're not
don't
a
go to
Packer fan?
Wisconsin.
Well, we're going to wrap on that. Who do you cheer for?
Okay, if I had to cheer for a team near Iowa, Kansas City Chiefs.
God,
Near my
who set up
2
this
hours away.
Joni, let me tell you this. You get your very own Plaidcast mug.
gosh.
I want to thank you for being on our show.
That's
If you have any
fantastic.
comments or questions for us, any
Sean.
feedback on how we do a better job, questions we should ask future guests, Joni, you are awesome. Thank you for your service in the
you.
Senate. Thanks for coming on the
Pleasure.
Plaidcast. We are very grateful.
Sean, you're awesome. Thank you.
Could we play again? On what?
You're awesome.
I'm awesome, yes.
Awesome.
Listen, until next week, thanks for joining us for this episode
Thank
with Joni
you.
Ernst from Iowa. See you again later.
Appreciate it. Thank you.